the triple it.
Starving, stomach touching, no lunching, broke, no hope, pocket lint clutching. Can't eat, can't sleep, can't function. Cop pushing me in the street, bum rushing. Pull something out of the trash can and ate it. Pretend, imagining my mom just made it. Breath smelling like boat smoke with no soap. Sprinkle of soap, holes that my toenails poke. In my sock, from walking the block with no shoes. If I die, I won't even make it on the news. Bump chill, giving the spill and narration. Hancock is on your watch, legislation. Talk about my tax dollars, put it in context. Buy land, build a complex, it's not that complex. I'm not impressed cause we fell in the test. Folks claiming that they're blessed, but you're looking a mess. I'm in raw, keep a watchful eye in my eye. What you do when the dark comes out on the block. Kids with no place to go, they just roaming. Pushed out from gentrification and zoning. Honing on the issues, get it fixed. So we can praise you on the next one, remix. If Colorado's the best place to live, change it. Homeless can't even get warm meals or blankets.
Cut the streets, need you. You promised to do something, but we don't believe you. Man, cut the city and need you. Promised to do something, but we don't see you. Man, cut the streets, need you. You promised to do something, but we don't believe you. Man, cut the streets, need you. You promised to do something.
Picture the vision. Do you care how they living? Is your pride a mile high? Hancock the unforgiving. Forbidden people who treated unequal. Never ending sequels. This world is pure evil. It's a war going on outside. Face your fear. Lack of humanity damaged us from the rear. We got money for wars but can't house the poor. Bank accounts galore, hiding billions offshore. Too many rich people making millions. Poverty's profits are deceptive. Now tell us who's a villain. You rather see them in coffin. We seen it too often. Mental madness. You a savage from your talking like a toy all wound up. Homeless camps round up on bill from the ground up. A scared to come around. Plus, what would you do if this was you? Would you take it for granted the way you do? We know you would.
Cut the streets, need you. You promised to do something, but we don't believe you. Man, cut the city and need you. Promised to do something, but we don't see you. Man, cut the streets, need you. You promised to do something, but we don't believe you. Man, cut the streets, need you. You promised to do something.
Downtown looking like a war zone. Many despondent, no place to call home. Let me expound just a little bit. Families is homeless, city ain't this shit. We don't need sweets, we need solutions. Hypothermia just keep executing. Excrement covers the streets where kids plant their feet, but we throw them $1 just to eat. Wandering into that old mission. Just one night of shelter is not sufficient. Another shot at life is what they need. And a decent place to rest their feet. Remember, one false move, you can be in their shoes. So watch who you turn your nose up to. Aurora and Denver is not the same, but we still say justice for Elijah McClain.
Your hand cut the streets, need you. You promised to do something, but we don't believe you. Your hand cut the city and need you. Promised to do something, but we don't see you. Man, cut the streets, need you. You promised to do something, but we don't believe you. Man, cut the streets, need you. You promised to do something.
The evidence, you've been hesitant and negligent to protect the residents and unhoused veterans. Those you're traumatized, you can learn a lot from. The lessons of life, how to provide protection. The message to the mayor, please understand. This is a Arapaho youth in Cheyenne land. In a pandemic, citizens are dying, man. No place to use the toilet or wash their hands, and no safe outdoor space to shelter in place. The facts you gotta face, you could never erase. Your lame duck legacy, past the buck policy, history of hypocrisy, fake ass apology. The Mile High City's now a danger zone. You disrespect City, Baca, and Calderon, and now we see you got your sights set on DC. Well, we gon' let the whole country know. Believe me.
Your hand cut the streets, need you. You promised to do something, but we don't believe you. Man, hand cut the city and need you. Promised to do something, but we don't see you. Man, cut the streets, need you. You promised to do something, but we don't believe you. Man, cut the streets, need you. You promised to do something.
Well, you did promise to do something. Sweep trash, not people. Repeal the urban camping ban, and that's the message to the mayor. And in fact, any would-be mayors Councilwoman Candy C. DeBach is in the free think zone. Straight, I feel like I'm in that after the game locker room talk because last night you did your thing once again. Head and shoulders above your competitors in a forum/debate in GS, Globeville area, Swansea area. And I'm telling you, Councilwoman, on my way there, once I turned that corner, I got lost. I don't know what's happening in 5 Points, and I certainly don't know what's happening in any corner that I turn. And I can tell you a lot of money is at stake.
Yes, and you were not the only one who was lost. People from the neighborhood were lost. So it's kind of a new thing we get used to over there nowadays, just getting lost all the time in our own neighborhood because things are changing without our permission or input all around us.
No input. Kind of like the 4 Points where they just blocked it off. You showed up and it was done, and they say, no, well, maybe we could have done a little bit better communication with the community. Have you been getting a lot of that over there?
A lot, yeah, a lot of that. And the funny thing about it is, like, that place we were at is considered a community asset. They call it a community asset. There's no way for us to get to it from the community side. Like, you saw how you had to get in there.
Yeah, I couldn't get there again.
Yeah.
It was very nice once you get there. But how I got there, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
Yep.
Candy C. DeBach, she's doing a great job. She's running for city council in Council District 9, and now you're running as an incumbent. So it seems as though all arrows and slings are at you.
I mean, they were the first time around.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
I don't understand how the dynamic doesn't change. This time I expected a little bit more just because, time, and I am the incumbent. But it was the same dynamic last time, so.
Well, actually not, according to one of your, those seeking the seat, Quan Atlas, actually said during the forum that a lot of dark money was spent against your the past representative of this area. He said that a whole bunch of money was spent against Albus.
Do you know how hard it was for me not to use my rebuttal card for that? It killed me not to use my rebuttal card. But
No,
I was
you did a rebuttal. No, you got to look, because I look real close. There was a quick bam, like.
It was the face rebuttal.
It's like, did I? Folks with dark money was working to get me elected? No, that didn't happen.
When did dark money become environmental groups, labor groups, social justice groups? Because that's who stood by me. That's who got me across the finish line.
Can you hit them with the trigger alert? Because I got a lot I want to unpack last night. I want to do about last night.
Yes, trigger alert. This is a show that triggers people because you've entered a free think zone. If you're not willing to be exposed to other points of view, tune out now and don't read the comments.
Don't read the comments.
You've been warned.
You've been warned. Councilwoman Candy C. DeBach is in the free think zone. I want to touch a little bit about last night because the Park Hill Golf Course conversation came up, and it comes up at it comes up at the mayoral forums, it comes up at the city council forums, it comes up everywhere. The Park Hill Golf Course is a huge discussion. And what was your take in terms of last night? Are you hearing anything new, or what should folks know about the Park Hill Golf Course?
Well, I didn't hear anything new. I was pleased to have the issue of the mailers raised, and very interested in the responses we got from one of my opponents in particular. But the trend is the same as it was last time. I think every election, or in the last two elections, we like to use poor people, unhoused people as a scapegoat. This is the new 300. In 2019, 300 colored the election in the exact same way that Park Hill Golf Course is coloring the election. And the same interests have aligned. It's big money, special interest, private profit, and they're using this narrative that it's about compassion, it's about caring for the homeless, getting people a place to live. when underneath it all, we know that's not true.
Why do
And we've
folks-
had 4 years
Or more.
post 300
Yes.
to prove to us that none of that narrative was true. No reason to believe this narrative, but it's the same people, same games, same interests, private profit interests.
We can do better was the last one.
Yep.
Why is it, well, I think I do know, but why is it that, those individuals who are most vulnerable show up so prominently in these campaigns, but less prominently in everyday life? You know what I mean? It's like, right now, there seems like a scramble drill of, we got to fix this, we got to do, and we're going to do it now, and we're going to do it now, and like, why ain't you been doing it?
Good question. It's inconvenient. It's only convenient now because it's a good talking point. It's a good population that they probably don't expect to get involved. It's a complicated issue, housing in general, and so it's convenient.
What do you think about, you brought this up in your opening remarks about the mailers. Can you talk about the mailers? And then I want to tell you a little bit about what I saw last night sitting on the other side watching the dais.
Well, in the week leading up to our council vote to put Park Hill, developing Park Hill on the ballot, there were 3 mailers sent. Anonymous mailers. They were all of them around the theme of affordable housing, but each one talked about a different vote we took. And let me remind you all, I kept saying it last night, I've voted on about 6,000 pieces of legislation since I've been in office, and many of them were about housing. But there were these 3 that they wanted to feature. These 3 votes were about affordable housing, or they had titles that would suggest that, but they were not all about affordability or affordable housing. And I voted no on them. And so the mailers all highlighted me as the lone wolf, the no vote, the contrarian, the person who doesn't care about housing. The most fascinating one we voted on Monday night. Of course, my colleagues sent it to the ballot, sent a very misleading question to the ballot. After several of them had committed in 2019 not to doing that, but they sent it. And on the following day, another mailer was in people's mailbox. And this one was probably the one that I would say was most overt in trying to take a side one way or another on something that's on the ballot. It says, it's time to take on Denver's housing crisis. Affordability is on the ballot this April. A new Denver City Council will determine the direction of our city. And so there's only one thing on the ballot that even has that word affordable in it. And that affordable word was a very misleading part of this ballot question, but it's the Park Hill Golf Course development. And so while these were anonymous, it's very clear to me where they came from. It's also very clear to me because they were not just sent to people in my district, which is what you would do if you were my opponent trying to sway our election, but they were sent citywide. If you're not tuned into campaigns and you don't understand why we raise money, this is why we raise money. This is how we talk to voters. This is very expensive. This is about 65 cents a piece of mail. So that means for 4 mailers citywide, they probably spent about $1 million. $1 million to not take a position anonymously about one person.
Well, let me just tell you, and then I'm gonna ask we've got a couple of guests here also. But let me just tell you what I had an opportunity to observe yesterday. It was a great forum put on by the Greater Park Hill newspaper, and then also the GES newspaper as well. Those were the conveners of the forum, and they asked the very direct question that one they asked you about your votes. In other words, why do you think these are coming out? And everyone who's a little bit poquito politically astute, whenever we get something, we first see who sent it. That's why the anonymous part of these pretty glossies is so deceitful. And so let me just tell you, because I know you're watching, whoever did this, you're deceitful. And you know you're deceitful, and that's why the voters are going to turn against you again, because we don't like deceit. We don't like you using issues of unhoused neighbors who you don't care about to be the face of your developments about this is why. You are the same We Can Do Better crew dressed up in a different dress in 2023. But here's what we were able to see, and it was hilarious. The moderator asked your opponents, and there are two, Quan Atlas and also Daryl Watson. Daryl Watson. Great guys. But it was telling and it was hilarious. The moderator said, do you know or have anything to do with, you know anything about those mailers? Those mailers. And you started seeing the twitching began. Like, I'm sitting there watching. It was like the twitching began. Like, and then, and then all of a sudden you started hearing, Candy answered clearly. I voted against the housing because they put a whole bunch of other stuff in that wasn't really related to housing. That's why I voted the way I did. Then it goes to Daryl Watson.
No, first the other one, and he said no, right?
No, it first went to Daryl.
Okay.
They had, how many minutes did you guys have? Like a minute, 2 minutes?
About 2 minutes.
About 2 minutes. Daryl goes into, well, it's time to take on housing crisis. Affordability is on the... I mean, his whole answer was about affordable housing. This guy read the playbook for 2 minutes straight. He didn't answer the question at all. Zero. He's like, and we need housing. The question was, do you know anything about these unattributed ballots? We need affordable housing. And let me tell you why we need affordable housing. Because housing is housing, and affordable housing is what we need, and affordable housing, and for 2 minutes straight. And then he was like, phew. And then it went to Quan. Quan was like, let me answer the question. I ain't got nothing to do with none of that stuff. Nope. Quan's like, nope. As a matter of fact, I don't like it. It's another reason why we need to have some legislation to prevent it. And as a matter of fact, dark money weighing in on our politics, that's what we don't like. I was like, those are two very different answers. And then while Daryl was answering not answering the question, folks was in the audience, answer the question. and if you watch the tape real closely, he went all the way away from not answering that question, and then he said, oh yeah, I didn't answer that question. Would you give me an opportunity to answer that question? I didn't answer the question. I don't know nothing about that. I was like,
Yep.
And guess who was in the audience?
West Side.
Sure was.
West Side.
Now, I'm not talking about West Side supporters.
No, they were there.
Guess who was in the wings? I spied with my little eye, because I turned the corner. Mm-hmm. Hi, Ken Ho.
Yep.
He was over there in the corner behind the bleachers watching. I was like, ooh, this is very interesting.
Couldn't even show himself.
No. He's back in that lurking behind that corner. I'm like,
this.
I'm like, woo. I'm like, everybody, if you don't believe me, watch the tape. Because I'm sorry, I didn't have a chance, but I didn't have a chance to answer that question. Give me a chance to answer that question right now. I don't know nothing about it.
It was so obvious.
I was like, ooh, this is crazy. But with that being said, I could tell you somebody else who was there. Maria, were you there? Am I just making this stuff up?
No, you're not making it up. I thought Ken had left because I didn't see him. Somebody told me he was there, and then he left. So getting back to the dark money and the flyers, I am one of, about 8 citizens who asked Paul Lopez, our city clerk and recorder, to investigate. And he, instead of investigating, he appointed a hearing officer and started a process. And I just got yesterday, just before I went over there, I got a pre-hearing order. So all of us have 20 days from yesterday to respond. And what we're supposed to do is provide the identity of the persons that paid for the direct mailings. They want us to come up with the dark money person that isn't revealed on the flyers. So we either provide the identity because they want them as a respondent, or name a respondent. Just out of the blue, I guess. Just out of the blue. So this is novel. We don't know whether to ask them if we can use subpoena power. We don't know whether we just go ahead and start naming people not at random, but people that we suspect. Like, do we come back and say, it's West Side? Do we come back and say it's the Watson campaign? Although I don't think the Watson campaign has $1 million. So we're now being diverted into this process before the clerk and recorder. It's going to be a waste of time, but here we are to talk about what the city has done, which is rather than investigate, they've put us all through this procedure where we have no power and they want us to come up with the name. All we know is that it circles back to an outfit called Moxie.
But
And by the way, Penfield Tate, he is running for city council at large.
glad to be here. Thank you, Brother Jeff.
Penfield, and Candy Cedarbaka, you're running for re-election. We discussed that. Penfield, what is it that we're watching? And I'm pretty sure voters just do not like and are turned off by these insider, tricky maneuvering type tactics, or am I making that up?
No, you aren't making it up at all, Brother Jeff. And this is the part about the political process that so turns off the voters. What happens in elections most times is, I'm a candidate, Councilwoman Cedarbaka is a candidate, people know who we are, we have to go in front of people, voters, and say what we believe in, say what we stand for, and defend it. And then they have a right to ask questions and agree or disagree. The problem with these mailers is you have a bunch of cowards who want to try to sway public opinion because they do it anonymously. They're never held accountable, so they're not beholden to the truth or accuracy or anything else. They can say whatever they want to say and figure out that by the time we all know who's behind it, the election's over. The election's April 4th. So this is not an accident. This is calculated that it's come out now. We can bet dollars to donuts. We'll see more of these mailers about various candidates in various races and or making pronouncements about affordable housing. And what's misleading is, and Brother Jeff, you've heard all these presentations. First of all, I'm not convinced this developer is going to do what they're saying to try to get people to vote yes, but nothing they've talked about is aimed at helping the unhoused, but they're going to try to make it seem like, their development is the magic potion. I did one of these forums and debates with Ken Ho and some of his people during the 301, 302 debate, and they started talking about developing the Park Hill Golf Course would create affordable housing, would solve gang violence. I'm like, okay, we're about to see some unicorns and rainbows run across here pretty quickly here. They're thinking it's the cure-all for everything, and of course there's nothing fixed or concrete. What voters are being asked to vote on is a concept, is a plan. And what we say on the other side of this is if the city and the developer are willing to violate state statute and not go to court and get an order, and if they're willing to violate the state constitution by giving Westside what may be a $60 million gift of our easement, what makes you think they're going to honor a contract or an agreement?
Let me ask you all something, because I want to go back and I don't know. We've been talking about this since 301, right? Mm-hmm. And even before.
Since I-70, kind of.
Yeah.
It was
It
all
goes way
started with
back.
the Platte to Park Hill that whole conversation, the condemnation that triggered all of this started with the Platte to Park Hill project for drainage that was directly connected to the I-70 expansion.
Now, I'm starting to forget more than I even knew about it, and now I gotta relearn it again for this new iteration while educating those who are being swindled. And,
Yep.
and let me just tell you what I mean by that. It's very divisive to put people against one another on behalf of other people's interests. This isn't about black folks. This isn't about unhoused neighbors. This is about folks who stand to make a lot of money, and that's what it's about. And I don't mind folks making money, but just don't do it off my back. You know what I mean? And so what I want to do is go back 1,000 years, and I want to talk about the Colorado Conservation Easement. I don't want to talk about, the unicorns and the rainbows and all that stuff. Here's my analogy, Penn, and you're an attorney, and I want you to tell me if this makes sense. I've got a car. Someone steals my car. And then they come back and say, but wait, Brother Jeff. It has some horrible rims on it. I'm going to put some nice rims on it. And I'm going to reupholster it. I'm going to let you even drive in the back. You're like, you could drive it twice a week, and you could even sit in the back seat. I'm like, it's my car. No, don't worry about that. What color do you want that car to be now? I'm like, this is what I'm seeing with this Park Hill golf course. There is a conservation easement on it. It means something. And Penfield, as an attorney, can you give us Conservation Easement 101? Because now folks are trying to tell me, Brother Jeff, you don't own anything. You had a golf course, you had it for 12 years, and now and I know accounting, that's a depreciating asset, and so it is, you can write it off in your taxes or something. Conservation Easement 101, please, sir.
Sure, Brother Jeff. And let me add that my colleague Maria Flora is also an attorney as well. So
Nice.
we have a bunch of attorneys on the SOS team. Here's the bottom line. We have a state statute, and that's important because in Colorado, a conservation easement is created as a function of state law, not city. What I want to make is when we passed 301, that was an ordinance because we wanted some extra protection on top of state law. So even though I vehemently disagree with what council is doing, when people vote come April 4th, that is not going to change the conservation easement. It still has to go in front of a judge who has to weigh the state law issues and determine if the easement can be altered or amended or dissolved. And that's been our point all along, that the city shouldn't have wasted all this time and money doing all this stuff without the court saying under state law you could disrupt or dissolve this conservation easement. So the other thing that the city has done and that council approved over the objection of Councilwoman Sita Baca and 3 other council people who voted no on parts of this is they've agreed to this weird land swap with the developer, thinking that if the developer gives the city the land and then the city turns around and gives it back to the developer, hocus pocus, the easement goes away. And our point is no, it doesn't. But more importantly, what voters need to ask themselves is, why is your city going through all these twisted machinations to avoid complying with a state law that everybody acknowledges is there? Why don't you just go to the judge and see if you can comply with the law rather than trying to do a bunch of weird stuff to avoid it?
With that being said, Maria Flora, I want to just ask you right now, if you all are keeping up, and I hope that you are, what I want to do right now is separate the plans for development. You know what I mean? What color do you want the car? Do you want hydro? Do you want it to be a low ride? Do you want to tilt to the left? You want it to I want to set all that aside, and I want to just ask Maria, a conservation easement. I believe I, as a taxpayer, spent $2 million on said easement. what is a conservation easement and what does it give me as a taxpayer as it relates to Park Hill Golf Course?
I can talk about that. A conservation easement is an interest in land, and it's like a set-aside, so that that land is preserved forever in perpetuity as open space for purposes of open space and recreation. And that's what the taxpayers own right now. The only way that that can be terminated is, as Penn said, go to court and prove to a judge that because of a change in circumstances, it is now impossible for that real estate to be open space under the terms of the conservation easement. They'll never be able to show that. So West Side and the city, what they should have done, West Side made a big gamble in buying the property. There was a handshake somewhere that the conservation easement would be somehow terminated. So instead of the day after the purchase, going to court, straightforward, asking the judge to terminate the conservation easement, they instead enter into an agreement to put the golf course on hold for 3 years and engage in a planning process for development of the golf course, a development that is not permitted under the conservation easement. So it's what I call bass-ackwards. Step one should have been for West Side to figure out, are we stuck with this conservation easement and we just spent $24 million? That should have been step one. Instead, the city attorney's office and West Side came up with this fiction that conservation easement only permits golf course use. That is a lie, and that's the lie from which all of the development agreement, all of the rezoning, everything emanates. So that came from the city attorney's office. And what I love about this is that they close the golf course. They have an agreement that they can close it for 3 years while they do this planning process. And then West Side comes out with this literature, and they're calling the golf course defunct. All of a sudden, the golf course land is blighted, defunct, not used, it's dangerous, it's dirty. So they own it. So I don't know why they're calling their own land those kinds of names. But in my opinion, first step would have been to take that conservation easement to court to see if it could be terminated, because the answer then would have been no. Here we are, almost 4 years later.
Yeah.
And hundreds of thousands of dollars in city planning and consultants and studies and on and on and on. They're still going to have to go to court. Whatever happens with Initiative 2.0, they're going to have to go to court. So it's bass-ackwards.
You know, I want to ask Councilwoman Candy C. DeBach, I want you to ask a question of these attorneys in terms of, I know you've got queries, you know, like what is going on? And I want to run something by you. And I think all of the individuals, you know, I respect, you know, the Hollering Group and all these other folks, you know, I don't have a problem with them. I have a problem with the process. And then folks are trying to vilify me for asking questions about my investment. I have a $2 million investment, just like you have a $24 million investment. And just because you have an investment doesn't mean I have to eliminate my particular interest. Now, I think that makes sense. Now, from an attorney's standpoint, I had a conversation with Ken Ho, you know, at South High School, where we were just at for the reorg. And the two of us are having a reasonable conversation. But what I'm learning is when I'm talking to them and anyone else is talking to them, you can't get a word in edgewise. They'll jump in front of a camera. They'll overtalk you. They'll tell you you're not speaking the truth. When all I'm asking is, what do I get for my investment? Do I have an investment? And I'm getting a clear answer. Ken Ho told me I don't have anything. Do I have anything?
You don't have anything. You're literally, we bought that conservation easement because we couldn't afford the land. And that was a promise that the land would never be developed. That undeveloped land not only provides like open space, trees, the buffers we need in the most polluted zip code in America, which it is in, but it also stabilizes the community because it's undevelopable land. That's why they got it so cheap. If that land was developable, it would have been exponentially more expensive. So they got that land not for $24 million, but for $18 million because we paid them back. The city of Denver paid them back $6 million with the settlement agreement and the promise to conduct this whole visioning process.
I've got a deeper.
Like, you lost money already. You're not getting nothing back.
I want to ask because I'm replaying this conversation with Ken Ho, and I have this conversation with Norman Harris also, and others, and everybody's putting their stories out. When I'm just simply asking, what is my ownership stake also? Why do I have to just eliminate my ownership because you have a vision? They're like, don't you want housing? Don't you want a park? Don't you want a unicorn? Don't you want hydros? Don't you want the country? I'm like, if you could do all that, why didn't we elect you for 12 years?
Right.
And so my question is, the next thing I was told is, Brother Jeff, you had a golf course. That's what you had. And I said, well, it was my golf course then. Like, did they not buy a golf course pin? If you bought a golf course, did you know you were buying a golf course, or did you not know you were buying a golf course?
What they knew they were buying, Brother Jeff, was land covered by a conservation easement that just happened to be used as a golf course. And this is the other thing a lot of people don't appreciate. The conservation easement does not limit the use of the land to a golf course. That's what the Clayton Trust did when it owned the land. They wanted a golf course because the operator of the golf course paid them revenues every year to help fund the Clayton Trust program. But when Westside bought it, it was a functioning golf course. They didn't want to run it as a golf course. That's fine. They entered into a deal with the city not to run it as a golf course. Now, here's a real interesting point. The next time Kenneth Ho tells you it has to be a golf course, ask him, then why haven't you run a golf course for the last 3 years? Why'd you shut it down? There was nothing wrong with that property. You made a conscious decision to shut down the golf course. So if you say the conservation easement requires it to be a golf course, you're breaking the law. You're not running it based on your own definition of the conservation easement. That's what's so bizarre about all of this. And the reason is because he knows what he's saying isn't true. It doesn't have to be a golf course.
Well, let me ask, Maria, can you answer this question for me? Conservation easement, use agreement, and permitted uses. Like, is that too in the weeds?
No. Well, we know what a conservation easement is. It's a grant of an interest in land to preserve it forever in its open and scenic state, forever, in perpetuity, always. The use agreement, it's not a use agreement. The city attorney's office likes to call it a use agreement, and Westside tags onto that, but it's not a use agreement. That's a whole nother concept. And what was the other term that you used? There was another
permitted uses.
The permitted uses. Well, the purposes of the conservation easement are to maintain the land in its open and scenic condition for recreation and open space. There are a number of permitted uses. A golf course would be one of those. But that is not the only permitted use. And the conservation easement is also capable of being amended by the parties.
Well, with that being said, we're going to keep going down the line, and Drill, just, that's the open space coming through, the open space. Just lock that so the open space won't come in.
And
Penn,
Jeff,
you got another comment.
Let me just add something, because you asked a very good question about conservation easements and use agreement or use restriction. See, this is another game that the city and the developer are playing, because in the documents they gave City Council, they kept calling it a use restriction or use agreement, even though what's filed in the records, the property records of the city and county of Denver, is called a conservation easement. So It's kind of like if you see a dog walking down the street and someone says, I'm going to name this a bird. Well, you can call it whatever you want to, but what it is a dog. You can call this document, this interest in land, whatever you want to call it. But what it is at law and what it says it is a conservation easement. So this is just another part of the city and the developer playing games, trying to say that things aren't what they are. I mean, we had a former president who was real good at that. And they're just borrowing from that playbook, trying to confuse voters and make it look like they're not doing what they are, which is basically stealing the people's interest in property, the conservation easement. They're going to give it to the developer for free.
Councilwoman, you were talking about yesterday the need for open space, a tree canopy, polluted zip code, and even a potential to not only have trees, but to also grow them.
Like what we've heard from people is that there was never a robust open space planning conversation. So it was never even an option for the neighbors of Park Hill to talk about what kind of things they would like to see on open space. I think that we have a lot of needs for open space because our open space is shrinking. The more and more we develop this city, the more and more scarce open space becomes. Half of the golf course is in the most polluted zip code in America. And that's a problem for two reasons. One, because the trees that exist there, the green space that exists there, provides a buffer, albeit limited. It is a buffer that cleans the air from the pollution of the adjacent highway. It cleans the air for all of the neighbors who are predominantly black and brown and poor on the south side of that park. It's also a problem to want to put more people, 4,000 households in fact, into the most polluted zip code in America without addressing that fact and without a plan for any kind of buffer or resilience building for the environment, for the health and safety issues associated with living next to that kind of pollution.
Let me ask you, Councilwoman, this is a mathematical question, because when folks gaslight you, you start to think that you're wrong. You know what I mean? You're like, okay, with this development, this is going to be the 4th largest city park in the city and county of Denver. Brother Jeff, the 4th largest. Don't you want that? And when I say, well, right now it's the 3rd largest.
Exactly. Exactly.
Is my math off? Like,
no.
Folks, they're going, bro, you're going to get the 4th largest park. And folks like, hooray. And I'm like, but you got the 3rd largest right now. And they're like, don't you want the color of that car to be aqua? Or like, what do you? Is my math off?
No, your math is on point, and I think that's what they're counting on us not doing. They don't want us to do the math. Even just the price of it. $18 million, think about this, for 155 acres of land. You can't get a little small bungalow for anything less than $1 million these days. We're pretty close to $1 million for bungalows in these neighborhoods. That's 18 houses. That land is worth what it would cost to buy 18 Denver houses. And they're planning to put 4,000 households on that land. And they're telling you that this is for your benefit, that they're not trying to get over on nobody. They're not trying to make no money off of anybody. They're trying to serve the community.
They're social workers now.
Yeah, they're social workers.
I mean, okay, I want to ask you another thing, because they said, okay, how many acres is it? 155 or something?
155 is what it is now, yeah.
155, okay. I'm just doing, because my gas lighting is going crazy. 155 acres, okay. And they say we're going to give you, how many are they saying they're going to give us?
Well, they're claiming 100 acres.
Okay, listen.
What they're claiming.
Okay, now listen to my math. They're like, Brother Jeff, I'm going to give you 100 acres of land. And I'm like, I own 155.
Sure do.
Like,
but Brother
I
Jeff,
got 155, and you're telling me I'm gonna give you 100, and I'm supposed to say that's a great deal.
well, they aren't giving you 100 because 25 acres is already being dedicated to the stormwater detention pond as part of Platte to Park Hill. So I took a drive there this weekend after church. I went to Zion, went to see this. It's like a 30-foot drop from the top to the bottom of this stormwater detention pond. There are cement walls, there are culverts to direct the drainage ditch, and there are no trees or anything in that. It's kind of like muddy and swampy even now. So that's not parkland, and the city does not intend it to be parkland. And Councilwoman, unless I missed it, the city never appropriated any money to beautify it or fix it up. So of the 100 acres, 25 of it is like a swamp. It's a stormwater detention pond. So now you're down to 75 acres. So, Brother Jeff, you live in Northeast Denver, so you're familiar with Martin Luther King Boulevard.
Yeah, but I'm
Monaco
so familiar with
Parkway,
it. We used to call it 32nd.
32nd, and 17th Avenue. So you know how you have traffic going either way, and you got that green area in between. Mm-hmm. Do you consider that a park?
No, I consider that if you go to New Orleans, we call that the neutral zone. That's just the thoroughfare, and then no, that's not a park.
I've never seen kids playing in that quote unquote park.
Not once.
But they count that as part of the 100 acres of parkland. So Denver voters are getting bamboozled here. They throw a bunch of green up on a map and call it all parkland, but you'd be risking your life trying to get some of that green grass in between 4 lanes of traffic. No, it's not a parkland. It's green space, but it's not park, and it's not open space because it's not usable or accessible.
I want to ask Councilwoman Candy C. DeBaca, and I want to read this to you a little bit, because this says, what is a Colorado conservation easement? It says Colorado, not a Park Hill conservation easement. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Not a Globeville conservation, not a GES, not a Cherry Creek, like a Colorado conservation easement. Conservation easements in Colorado are created in accordance with and must comply with the Colorado Conservation Easement Statute. It even has a revised statute number and all those fancy squiggly things behind it, which means it's really important. Yep. When you get the squigglies, it's important. Now, a Colorado conservation easement is an interest in real property created by a voluntary legal agreement between a landowner and either a governmental entity or private land conservation organization like a land trust. In exchange, see, right here what I'm reading, it says it's voluntary, it's a relationship, it is a interest in real property. So when somebody says, Brother Jeff, you don't own anything, I can say, no, I have an interest in real property. I mean, can I say that?
You can say it.
I have an interest in real property. And the reason I have it is because it was in exchange for granting a conservation easement, the landowner receives a monetary payment or tax credits, etc. The landowner retains ownership of the land subject to the permanent limits placed on the permitted use of the land in order to fulfill identified conservation purposes. Does that say permanent?
Yes, it does.
This is a real thing.
Permanent, perpetual, goes with the land no matter who buys it.
Somebody signed it, and once you signed it, you signed it, right, Penn?
Yep.
Right, Maria. Once it's signed, right?
Imagine.
Perpetuity.
Exactly.
Forever and ever. Amen.
Okay, so let me just ask you all as we begin to wrap things up, because we want folks to really look into all of this. We want them to look into all of what is going on. With this conservation easement in place, just making it go away is not something that we can take lightly, right? Mm-hmm. So there are a couple of candidates that said, I don't like the process of how we got here, but since I'm going to vote, I'm just going to vote. But the process was flawed. This is a bad process, but why not just go to an attorney? Attorney's going to tell you your side, but doesn't the judge decide when there's two sides? Don't judges tell you?
That's why the statute says if you want to alter, amend, or dissolve it, you have to go to a judge and prove that it's impossible, not just hard, not just financially difficult, not just inconvenient, but it's impossible to use the land consistent with its original purposes because of changes on or around the land.
So I thought it real obviously at the beginning, and even though folks are bent out of shape with my voice or my particular stance, and usually it's because they've got an interest in the outcome. It's like, and some of y'all acting real desperate, like real, like overly.
It's embarrassing.
I didn't answer the. Give me a minute. Answer that question. I don't know nothing about it. Like, you've been speaking real clear for all these questions. When you get a direct question, you stuttering. But with that being said, some of these developers love some of these candidates more than they love others.
So much. So much. One of my opponents was sharing a table with them, with Westside, on Saturday.
Of course.
That ain't even supposed to happen.
Not supposed to happen? Breaking the rules right in front of our face, but then telling us we're going to follow the rules?
Yeah.
Because I saw Maria. She was like, I can't go in there. I was like, why? I was like, man, I ain't get a table. They ain't let me pass my stuff out, so I got to come outside. I'm like, okay. But some folks who say that they're going to all this integrity in there, breaking the rules right in front of my face.
Yeah. One of them didn't buy a table.
That being said, where do we go from here, Penn, Maria? Where do we go from here? Because now the voters, they're not in the weeds like this. You know what I mean? They just don't want the tents. They think that, we just want some open space. That sounds like a great idea. We want a park. We want affordable housing. Where do we go from here? And what would you like folks to know?
I'd like folks to know, vote no on 2-0. You're not going to get the affordable housing that was promised. You're not going to get the park that's promised. You've got a developer, and don't get me wrong, Brother Jeff, you and I had this conversation before. I have no problem with developers making money. But this is our conservation easement, our land, and the city is giving it away just so a developer can profit, hoping that the city might get something useful out of the deal. There is no guarantee that's going to happen, because all that exists is an agreement, and agreements get rewritten and changed all the time. So we need voters to vote no on 2-0, and we'll see what else percolates, because there are a lot of upset people out here. But that's the bottom line.
Well, it's going to take a couple of years for the upset to wear off. Like last election season, it took a couple of years for the upset to wear off, and then we get balance, and they got to do it all over again. Maria, it's the game is not being played fair. Money is, tipping the scales. And has anyone looked into the relationship with West Side and Loretta Heights community?
That's theirs. Or how they've fulfilled their promises?
Yeah, like, are they good neighbors? Are they loving it? Like, thank you. Because last time I heard, them old trees was just spontaneously combusting.
At the reorg this weekend, on Saturday, there were people who live in that area who were talking about Westside not fulfilling their promises, not doing what they said they were going to do.
Well, if you're not, and I don't know who we don't know who did this at all. Don't know. Like, go back and watch the video. My man Daryl, your game is cool. Don't get me wrong. The first debate, you came out screaming. You sounded like real, like it was real hostile. And then you toned that down, and in your speech, you did exact talking points, the developer talking points from these mailers. And then when we pinged you on it, you stopped the second debate. You toned it down. You looked real good. You looked presidential. You're doing your thing. You got your swag. But he tried to skirt that "did you know any" question because it's like if I don't answer, I ain't gotta lie.
Yeah.
I just don't know. Like if I don't y'all are attorneys. Like man, I can always I didn't answer that question. It was asked. I didn't say anything. And if you watch the tape, he sat through that whole thing, and it was like I ain't saying nothing about that at all. And answer the question. It was like, oh, I didn't answer the question.
It was a yes or no question.
Right.
All you got to
The
do.
easy kind.
It was one of them easy ones. And like Quan, I got all the respect for Quan on that answer. Because Quan came hard. He was like, man, I ain't got.
Well, he learned his lesson last time. He learned his lesson last time. Remember the monkey flyer that was anonymous?
Oh, yeah.
But you know, Brother Jeff.
Yeah, that's right.
That what you saw in that debate that the councilwoman's putting up with, you'll see it in all of the candidate forums and debates. We had one for city council at large earlier this week at Regis University. Same thing, yes or no question. Do you support the redevelopment of the Park Hill Golf Course? Stand up. Are you opposed? Stand up. We had two candidates, Travis Leiker and Serena Gonzalez Gutierrez, who didn't stand up for either one, yes or no. And I mentioned to Mr. Leiker and said, they're asking us to stand up one way or another. And he's like, I'm split 50-50. And, the reality is people want to vote for leaders. And as the councilwoman knows, when you're sitting there and the questions before you, maybe is not an option. I'm thinking about it is not an option. You go with the best information and knowledge you have at the time, and it's yes or it's no, and then you look your constituents in the eye and defend your vote. But sitting down saying maybe I'm thinking about it or I can't decide, that's not leadership.
What is this conversation about the community benefits agreement? Like, what is that all about? Maria, do you have any community benefits agreement updates? Because on one side of that particular argument, I'm hearing folks say we don't even know who participated in that. And on the other side, they're saying everybody knows who participated in that. What is the CBA and that talk about that process?
I'll let Penn talk to the details, but we haven't seen the full community benefits agreement as I sit here. I have asked 3 different people 6 different times to give me the full community benefits agreement because I'm all about who's going to enforce it and what means do they have to do that. So I've asked the lawyer, Noah Stout, for it, I think 3 times now. Oh, it's not signed. I can't give it to you. I asked Helen Bradshaw for it 2 different times, and she said she would send it to me. Didn't do it. I saw her last night, asked her again. She said that she couldn't send it to me because the people who signed it are afraid of being harassed, I guess by me. So we have not seen the community benefits agreement. There's been a summary that was provided to council that I managed to wrest out of somebody. I have it here, but we have not seen it.
So, Brother Jeff, it's really not a community benefits agreement. It's a city developer benefits agreement because what the city and the developer did was pick a bunch of people, had them agree to certain terms, had some organizations agree to terms. At least a couple of the organizations I know have a financial interest in the redevelopment of the site, and then won't tell the quote-unquote broader community who negotiated this deal, who gave away their rights, won't tell the broader community who gets to enforce it. And the most insulting thing is they're claiming it's a benefit for the community, but they won't give anyone in the community a copy of the agreement. I think City Council voted just based on a summary. You guys didn't even have the signed agreement, Councilwoman Sita Baca. I was hearing the attorney who wrote the agreement said, I wrote it and we just signed it and it's final and it's great. I'm like, well, good, here's my card. I'm an attorney also. Would you give me a copy of the agreement? Yes, I'll be happy to give it to you.
Council,
Nothing.
Council never got it. And I think one thing that's important to know is that community benefit agreements are not enforceable by the city. And we've been super clear about that over and over with a lot of different projects. So it is problematic that we're saying this community benefit agreement is for everybody, but nobody in the community knows about it. Nobody can see it. anonymous people signed it. My side of the community was not included, was not consulted. And we're told that, oh, it was up to you to take initiative to negotiate with the developer for your own CBA, when they wouldn't even let us participate in the visioning process. So it is all very disingenuous. They're selling it to people like it's in their best interest. And this has happened to us before. I mean, this is exactly what happened right here. This is exactly what happened in the East Side when they told us, oh, you'll want to do this, you'll want this bid, you'll want this thing because you'll get your houses, you'll get your economic opportunity, all those things that you want. This is going to be the Black Renaissance, all of this stuff. And a developer was behind it. And in that case, the developer even looked like us. And look what we have here. Look what happened.
Well, I've seen it all.
Yeah, even on 300, a different issue where you had people who had an interest in city contracts, city money. They were silenced during 300. They couldn't take a position. Colorado Coalition for the Homeless, they took a position against 300, and they were basically doing that because they knew they had financial interest with the city. As soon as we get past that, they're like, oh yeah, we don't support sweeps. Well, why didn't you say that? Well, we had contracts on the line. You know, that's exactly what's going to happen here. The organizations who are part of the CBA, the organizations that are endorsing, they all have something to gain. And when it all falls through, everybody's going to come back around and be like, we didn't support that. We don't support that.
Well, I know I've got one fundamental difference, and everyone who wants to have a conversation, just remember, I'm not talking about the unicorns and the rainbows. I'm talking about my interests as it relates to the conservation easement. If you're talking to me, address that issue with me. And I believe the only one who's going to answer that question is a judge.
Yeah.
I don't care about your opinion. I don't care about your feelings. I don't care about what you want. Once the judge says something, then I'll know exactly what it is. And I believe the judge may be saying something sooner rather than later, because folks always hit me with these links and they're like, Brother Jeff, your lawsuit, you lost it. You, boom, look, they wouldn't hear it. Like, they're like pounding on me like I already lost pen. What's our next steps?
Well, there may well be another lawsuit, Brother Jeff. Remember what happened the first time. The judge said you filed the lawsuit too soon, that the city was in the planning conversation process and hadn't done anything. Well, the city's now approved a small area plan. The city's now approved rezoning. The city's now approved an agreement that is a land swap that gives away your conservation easement, and city's now agreed to put the issue on the ballot. The city's committed. It's going to develop. That's what they're pushing. So there's no more of this. The city hasn't made a decision yet. The other thing to remember, and Councilwoman Sita Baca said this, when we talk about this long process, remember, Save Open Space Denver was part of the process, but they kicked us off the visioning group because we didn't support development. We said, and to the councilwoman's point, we said, let's have a conversation about open space recreation and how that should be part of the vision. And they said, well, no, thank you. Since you're not supporting development, you can't be on the committee anymore. And they kicked us off.
Well, philosophically, can you all just tell me, if this makes sense also? And this goes back to my conversation with Ken Ho and 1,000 other people, not just Ken, the 1,000 other folks. I am of the belief, Maria, listen to this. I'm of the belief that the people are the city, and we elect representatives to go and govern on our behalf. I think they call it representative government or something like that. I think I heard that in civics somewhere, that this is a democracy and we get to elect representation. In other words, we don't have King Hancock. You know what I mean? We don't have dukes and earls and kings and muftis and all everything, thoughts from on high to tell you. And I'm like, nope, I elect you to represent me, and I'm the city. We're the city. That's what I think. Ken believes that the city is something over there. The city owns something. The city owns something. And I'm like, Ken, I'm the city. Mm-hmm. You're the city. So is it safe to say we just have a philosophical difference about what the city is? What's a city without the people?
Yeah, I mean, and that is how special interests perceive it. The city is an entity separate from the people rather than an extension of the people. And to some degree, we've bought into that narrative ourselves. You know, we don't see ourselves as the city. We don't see ourselves as the owner of everything outside of this door. We think it's a separate entity. And we've been conditioned to do that so that we don't take ownership over it and do exactly what we're doing here.
Well, greater debates and more conversations are going to be had over this election period, and it's just 4 weeks away. I mean, those ballots are going to drop immediately. You're going to get more of these. I spy with my little eye some that are going to say, we need a city council at large member that believes in affordable housing. The hit pieces are coming. I believe whoever did this. I believe because nobody knows whoever did this. I believe they've got their tentacles in every one of these races because this city needs to continue going in the direction where they have insiders, special interests, outside folks who own everything, and they're not willing to give that up. We need to make sure the people's voices are loud. When you start getting 2 and 3 and 4 of these, or even one, and it doesn't say where it comes from, but it's got big, pretty fonts on it, but it's got your address, you're being targeted because they don't think you're intelligent enough to read beyond what somebody put in your mailbox. We're going to keep educating. And speaking of education, thank you for those who make it happen. All of our patrons, we appreciate it. Thank you to those who go to brotherjeff.com and make donations of any amount. And then there's the great Leanne Wheeler's favorite option. It's Cash App, $JEFF, And don't forget about Chubby Curls, educating the natural community one scalp at a time. If you got those little skinny curls, make them chubby. You're running. Is there a way folks can get more information about you, your race, and even if they make a donation or contribution or investment into your campaign, it's matched 9 times?
Yes. Go to candyctabaka.com. There's a donate button. There's a volunteer button. There's a button to find out our calendar of events so you can show up. Get involved. We're less than 55 days away, and this is not about just me. This is about you. This is about how special interest perceives you and wants to prey on your ignorance. Don't let it happen. Don't let it happen.
Penfield, you're running for city council at large. How do we get in touch with you?
Tate for citycouncilatlarge.com, FOR4. Same thing as the councilwoman. There's information about our platform on affordable housing, the unhoused, crime, transportation, open space, and recreation, as well as a place to volunteer and donate. Please visit Tate4citycouncilatlarge.com.
Maria, you were at the city, the Denver Democrats reorg, and they, except for 3 to 5 votes, the Denver Democrats might have been voting, to say no to whatever it is that's trying to take place. But it was a clear straw poll that individuals who are watching and paying attention are really tired of the dirty politics and don't think that those Denver Democrats are not informed. What happened? What did you see? And Penfield and Candy and crew, you all were swinging at them bleachers.
That was a great day Saturday, and Westside expected to go in and come out with a resolution in support of 2-0. That didn't happen. That measure was withdrawn. Then there was a measure to be neutral. And the Dems voted 2/3 not to be neutral. Then there was a vote to oppose 2-0. And unfortunately, it had to pass by a 2/3 majority under their rules. We were 3 votes short of a supermajority to oppose 2-0. So I think the message of the day was that the Denver Dems largely opposed 2-0. And my message is don't let developers buy Denver. It doesn't have to be a golf course. We want a big park on that 155 acres, and don't buy the same old story.
Penn, final words.
Maria said it best. Don't be hoodwinked. Don't be snookered. Don't let someone give away what you paid for with your tax dollars against your wishes. We should all have a say on what happens to this land, not give it to some developer just because they cut a deal with City Hall and they want it. It's ours. We paid for it. We should determine what happens to it.
Wow. Councilwoman Candy C. DeBaca coming fresh off of a forum where you were light years ahead of the
Thank you.
competition or competitors. You're very knowing, capable. Did you say 6,000 votes?
Yeah.
And they're trying to pigeonhole you all the time. What are your final words to these free thinkers?
Be a free thinker. Be a free thinker. That's it. That's all there is to it. Pay attention. We're giving it to you in a way that you can just put it on in the background while you brush your teeth, while you cook dinner. We're making information as accessible as possible. And we're giving you the whole truth, nothing but the truth, and we'll send you to the documents to see them yourself. So trust people who want you to trust yourself. Don't trust people who put images of people that may look like you, may pull on your heartstrings to compel you with anonymous, misleading information.
Well, I'll tell you, it's great hanging out.
Say it with your chest.
Say it with your chest. What I would just say to each and every one of you, there are a lot of great candidates out here, and I'm sitting with a couple of them right now. You've got a lot of candidates to vet. You can tell the ones in terms of their records. You can tell about their history. You know, the ones that just showed up, the ones that have been there in the trenches. This isn't about, do you want affordable housing or do you want tents? This is about individuals that made an investment and they're going to maximize their investment. If they are not honoring your conservation easement, what makes you think they're going to honor anything else down the road? Because down the road, many of us won't be here, and then they'll make all of that stuff disappear, and then somebody will come up and say, hey, wait a minute, I was around when we were promised this, and this. And I'm telling you, that's why you have a disconnect between generations, because they don't want the next group to know that what they did to the prior group is about to happen to them because they're next at bat. Pay attention, look closely. You own a conservation easement, and so when they start talking to you about what do you want on that property, ask them, what is a conservation easement? If they go, I don't know. I don't know if they're lying, but I have a good suspicion that they know. Is that fair?
That's fair.
All right, you all. We're going to keep you informed. I'm going to go back through and restudy conservation easements and area plans and 5 metro districts. Metro districts is a whole nother story.
You're paying for their development on top of all of it.
That being said, if you go down swinging, you just might score a knockout. Rumble, young man, women, and community. Rumble. Great job, Candy.